There are men that have come up to me and said, I had my wife watch this, or I've had my daughter watch this, so they don't think that it's just being blown out of proportion. It's not just TikTok, it's not just something that went viral. Like, this happened to somebody we know. And it's really neat to see that just across the country.
Immediately when it went on social media, like, share. I mean, this story has gotten thousands of comments, thousands of shares. Were you surprised when you saw that reaction?
Yes and no, because I think it's just so real. And it was something so mundane that we were doing, right? It was just a day out in the middle of the afternoon. So, yeah, I was shocked, but no, because I think it caught everybody off guard.
Yeah.
So.
When you told me, when we first had texted, before you even knew who I was, or trusted that this wasn't like a weird, reporter situation, you had said, I really do want to share my story. Can you just reiterate again why it was so important for you to share the story with the people in the Hilliard community, the people in Central Ohio, and really, across the nation now?
It was really important because I think oftentimes victims are silent when something happens, and I just wasn't going to do that. And I also wanted to get the word out there because, again, like I keep saying it's such a mundane thing we were doing. It's something we all do every day, and I felt like people needed to know about it. And it just came out of left field. So, and there are things, and I didn't want to operate as a victim in the shadows, right? If that's what you choose to do, that's totally your story. But for me, I felt like it needed to be told because there are things we can do, not walking around with our heads in our phones, and being alert and being aware of our surroundings and taking some safety classes. And I just felt like, I don't know, that was my thing to do with it.
Yeah. Stephanie, you saw the story, I'm sure. Can you look back or share the moment you had heard about this story, what Gloria went through, and then saw the story on TV? What was your reaction to those moments?
Yeah, interestingly, I'm friends with Gloria through work channels and other channels, and so we're also friends on social media, and I had seen a post that was that she had posted about something that had happened, and it was vague because of the investigation. And then when I saw that there was a headline about a woman who had been attacked, I immediately said, oh my gosh, that was Gloria. Like, I put two and two together. And then when you reached out to me to share the story, and I had seen a little bit more about what had happened, I felt like I really appreciated your willingness to come forward and talk about what happened, because like you said, it could happen to anyone. I was one of the people that shared it with. I have two daughters. I'm the mother of two daughters. One lives out of state and one lives here. And so I sent it to both of them and did what you said. I said, this is someone I actually know. This happened in our hometown. Like, this is a real thing. It's not something you just see that goes viral that you think happened to somebody else. So sharing it, but also the fact that you really wanted to, I think, educate people about what to look for, how to protect yourself, just to be aware of your surroundings. And I think it was really timely, even going into the holiday season, because I know I found myself, when I was out shopping, I would think to myself, you can't always decide when you have to use the restroom, but I would kind of start planning ahead, like, where am I going to use the restroom? I actually sent Gloria a picture. Yeah. I was at a shop in Mill Run, and in the same vicinity of where this took place, and the bathroom doors were wide open, and I actually wondered if that was as a result of some of the education and some of the things that you have been putting out there, just to keep people aware and make them safe. Yeah. So
when you see the impact that she's had, one, as a friend, as a constituent in Hilliard, as a resident of Central Ohio, can you share the impact that you have seen her have from the outside looking in?
Yeah, so I think one of the other things I appreciated about your willingness to share it, but also the way you're speaking about it, you are empowered. You're not a victim. You had something that happened to you, but that isn't going to define you. And I think oftentimes in my work, I will find someone who has a tragic event happen, and it does start to become, it's obviously part of your story in your life, but it doesn't have to be who you are. You can take it and use it to really build on something and do something good with it. And I know when we met in my office, one of the things that there's plenty of educational opportunities, and other ways, and maybe not a million ways legislatively to fix something. But one of the things that we saw was, are there ways to make sure that people that we trust, whether it's in a rideshare situation, people who are making deliveries, all of these different people have a lot of access to us in different ways that we don't think about. And is there a way maybe to strengthen background checks? Gloria had mentioned that there was a possibility that he had a position in another industry that, where he could have access to other people and cause even more significant harm than he did in a public place, in a store with cameras and things being monitored. And so one of the things we took a look at was, how can we try to at least start? It's not the full, I think, thing that you could see, but start taking steps to make sure that we're keeping the public safe in some of those situations.
Yeah. And I want to ask more questions about how that process works, but Gloria, the fact that you went through something tragic, now it's starting to create concrete change by amending laws, making massive changes. I mean, I know it doesn't maybe seem massive when it's in writing, but like for us it is. Like that's a huge deal.
Absolutely.
Something horrible now turns into something that can benefit so many other people. How does that make you feel?
So I'm actually very fortunate. I have a lot of good friends and good connections of people that I've met that give you a platform that I think that maybe other people would not have the opportunity to utilize. And so when I reached out to Stephanie, she was immediately, please come in, let's talk about this. And so it does make me feel good because you want something good to come out of something bad, right? And so if we can help protect some other women from going through this, or kids. How often do I go shopping? I have tons of nieces and nephews, and I will have them at Target, and one of them will say, inevitably, I need to run to the restroom. Okay, fine, go. We'll be right here in toys. Not anymore. Like the awareness alone, that's not going to happen on my watch. And so I think if we can help some people just with awareness, that unfortunately not everybody out there has good intentions. And that doesn't mean living in fear, because I think it's a completely different thing. I think living in fear, you are living in that victim mode, but living in awareness puts you in control. And I think that's what we need to be doing. And that's what will help prevent, hopefully, some of these things or something like this happening to somebody else. Because I was able to fight back, and I was able to have, Tim bust in and help. But what about somebody else that couldn't have? And so that's what we need to try to help.
So that brought into the conversation, I think your background and your career being a real estate agent.
Yes.
You shared with me last time, when you're showing houses, you're alone. When I travel to different states for conferences and what have you,
right,
you're typically alone, have to get, rides to places. Can you describe that career surrounded around that aspect of you can be potentially more vulnerable?
So, I feel like statistics can sometimes be made up, right, and skewed, but I will just say that real estate is a very dangerous occupation, career, because we are often in homes. I mean, you think about and leasing agents, anybody within that industry, you're just sitting there if you're in an open house or an apartment complex waiting for people to come in, and you don't know what intentions they have when they're walking in. So again, being aware of exit routes and that kind of thing, there's just things that you can do to be prepared versus just kind of sitting there. But as far as like showing, it is hard because you're walking into vacant houses. I've not been able to do that yet since this happened by myself. I'm lucky that my son's my business partner, so he goes with me to any vacant houses for showings. You don't know what's in there waiting for you. And so I think that there are steps that you have to do to be prepared to deal with that. And for traveling, I cannot tell you how many ride shares I've been in across the country in the most remote areas. I mean, Alaska, all over the place, where it could be any time of the day or night getting to and from the airport or conferences, and I'm by myself, and I won't do that again, because I knew then, and I used the safety mechanisms they have in place, but that's just not enough. And so I won't do that again. I've been in rideshare since this happened, but never alone.
And that ties into then some of the ideas that you and your team were able to come up with. Can you take us a little bit like behind the scenes for our viewers who have no idea, okay, how does something get added to it? Like how does that even work? Can you share how that process works based on, you know, one of your residents saying, hey, this is an issue, can this be something that is taken to the governor?
I think a lot of times people don't realize that most legislation actually comes to us from our constituents. It was interesting because the timing of this was in the fall, and we were at the end of a 2-year General Assembly, which makes it a little bit more difficult, I guess, because of every bill that's introduced in a 2-year period ends or dies
Sure.
at the end of that General Assembly. And so there was an opportunity, though, to amend, instead of doing the normal process where you would introduce a piece of legislation, it'd be a standalone bill, and you would have hearings.
Yeah, that's a long process.
And
Yeah.
it has to pass the House and the Senate, and then, both have to, agree on, make changes, and then it goes to the governor for signature. But having the opportunity there was also an opportunity in the fact that we were late in the session, because there are times where if you are making certain changes, there are bills that are moving. So we were able to identify House Bill 405, which had a nexus to what the part of code that we were working on to strengthen the background check for ride shares. And it was something that thankfully I worked with my colleague who's the chair of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. Our Senate staff is excellent in helping draft legislation, and we also have something in Ohio that people don't maybe understand, but it's called the Legislative Service Commission, and they actually are a team of lawyers mostly who they're nonpartisan, they work for the House, the Senate, they help draft legislation as well. So they were able to send us some different amendments for this bill that we had identified, and we were able to take a couple different language options and really work with our chair, our lawyers, to see what would be able to get across the finish line in this General Assembly with it, which was basically in a few weeks. And so that's where we started. That was the starting point, which was to add and codify that rideshare companies must complete a background check annually. They do one when they first hire, but then there was nothing in Ohio law that required them to continue to update their records. And so that was kind of the first step that was not a low-hanging fruit, because it does make a big difference if they're annually checking to make sure that their drivers are safe and don't have some kind of a conviction or something that's happened.
Do most of the ride shares, like in other states, already do yearly checks? I mean, obviously they do one at the beginning, background, but is that common?
So I was told that certain companies do yearly anyway, but this will ensure
everyone, no matter what.
Exactly,
Okay.
and that they can't change a policy. They can't decide this is cumbersome, or for some reason we're not going to do yearly checks. Now they'll have to if they want to operate in Ohio.
Okay, well that's great. That's great. You had shared the text exchange of Stephanie saying, "Hey, we got this done." When you got that text, what was your reaction, to that, like sharing with your family and just that like internal maybe sigh of relief?
So what's interesting is I took a bit to respond because I really had to sit with it. It was just so spectacular. She mentioned it was in the fall, clearly, and she was so busy. And the fact that this was such a priority for her, like I had to sit with that for a little while. And that was so meaningful. I don't think you have any idea how meaningful that was. And that was my delay in getting back to you, because I couldn't put in words. And so I did. I shared it with family and said, look at this. This is amazing. The impact that we are having, right? The impact, like how many people will benefit from this. Like, luckily, we won't know how many people are going to benefit from this. But I know that I've been in situations in ride shares where I felt incredibly uncomfortable, and hopefully this will really help with that and help weed some of that out. It was very special. Yeah.
To know what a big deal this is to Gloria and to her family, and then to so many other families that will see this story after seeing Gloria's first story, to have made a mark on something that is having an impact like this. I'm sure that's pretty rewarding for you as a career woman.
You know, it's very humbling, actually. I think it's a blessing to be able to serve in the state senate and to have the relationships. Obviously, we had a relationship based on your real estate career and your advocacy. But I think that it goes even deeper than that, because it's really about the community that I serve, and to be able to not just help you personally, knowing you, but to really be able to make a difference for something that's going to affect not just our community, but the state going forward. I mentioned I'm the mother of 2 daughters, and so I take safety seriously. I was a former city councilwoman in Hilliard and served, one of my committees was the Police and Safety Committee, and I'm a Hilliard Citizens Police Academy graduate. And so there's a lot of, I think, connection here of things that were important to me, to make sure that we were educating people about how to be safe, that there are, safety classes available, that there's a lot of education that can be done. But to be able to make a change in Ohio law and the revised code at the end of a lame duck session, it was just actually a blessing and a joy to be able to help. And I think there's things that we can build on. There were a couple of other ideas that I had that were a little bit too, they would take more time to work through. And so I think I'm looking forward to hopefully helping my colleagues that are still in the Senate that understand the issue and understand what we were trying to achieve, navigate some even more ways to strengthen the code. But this was a definite great first step.
It was so great, and it was it's so much bigger than, like you said, it's so much bigger than just this, right? It is big.
One thing that we don't know for sure, right, if he was, was involved in Uber or Lyft, but we know that he, was driving people at some capacity. But I think that this story is bigger than this, right? It's, someone who went through something horrible and said, you know what, I'm not his victim, but I'm going to try to figure out ways to create change. And you had alluded to that when we had met the first time. We had talked about, can they do something with the bathrooms? Let me find out. Can they do this? I'm going to find out. I think this is just the start of something much more, whether it's working with Stephanie or other people down the road, maybe, not just here in Ohio, but beyond. What's next?
I don't know. I'll keep talking. He has not been sentenced as of yet, so we're still in that process. And I will say it's incredibly frustrating how long this takes, but we're here for the long ride. So I'm not sure what's next, but it's not something that I'll stop doing, because I just think it's that important. And I think once you take your foot off the gas, then something else just happens. And then we lose focus of what we're doing. So, it's interesting because there's realtor associations across the country that have reached out to me, and they've implemented safety sessions for their members because of this. And that's a huge win, right? That's a huge win. Again, we don't know how many people we have helped possibly avoid something similar, because he's not the only one, right? This happens all across the country, and I think it happens so much more than we even know. But people that have it happen to them, they internalize it, and for me that was going to be toxic and just not who I am. And I felt like that would let him win, and I just wasn't going to do that. So anyway, answering your question, I don't know what's next, but I'm going to keep trying to make connections and make waves. And this was so huge and so appreciated, and just a huge step that was not expected.
Did you ever think you'd be in a position where I'm at, my now, I have my career, but it's almost like the side hustle of I'm also going to be advocating for women nonstop for the rest of my life?
No, no, but I'll step into it and do it, because if I have a voice, then I'm going to continue to use it. Otherwise, it'd be pretty tragic, I think, to not use it. It's not martyrish to say it happened to me, but it happened to me, and so I think I need to do something with it.
Yeah.
You know
So-
what?
oh, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, ironically too, he tried to snuff out your voice.
Oh my God, yeah, that actually took my breath away. He did.
And so I feel like it gives me even more meaning for
my
you to
God,
say that you're not going to let your voice.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because in that moment, your first "Tim, help" was muffled. I mean, he had you.
Oh, he was strangling me. Yeah. And that's what he kept saying over and over again, to shut the F up.
Yeah.
That's constant. So I never even put that together. And he couldn't shut me up.
No, and he won't.
No. Oh my gosh.
I love that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
To know that you played a role in helping her advocate for other women, throughout your career and having so many leadership roles. What sets this apart from other things that you have achieved in every seat that you have sat in?
This is something that is going to be, sometimes when I'm working with on certain subject matter, it's a smaller group, or it's maybe a limited group of people that are definitely needing help and are affected by something, but this could happen to anyone. And so I think that's probably the biggest takeaway for me, is that this is something we all need to be careful and on the lookout and be cognizant of our surroundings, and really pay attention and be aware, and just being able to help amplify the story and help make some changes to keep people safe across the board. Anyone, you mentioned children earlier, but this could happen to anyone. It could happen to male, female, doesn't matter. And so I think it's been a blessing to be able to work on something that really could affect anyone's life and change it in a minute, in an instant, and try to keep Ohioans safe.
That's a really good point. This could happen to a male just as easily. I mean, because you're just caught off guard, right? And it's just so unexpected. So it is obviously focused on women because it happened to a woman. But yeah, it could happen to anybody. And kids, I mean, just how often, right? It's been really cool, though, to hear from some dads that take their kids to the store or, do things, whatever, go to a park, and they now go to the restroom with their kids and they'll stand outside. And that's a cool thing to know that, and here's the funny thing. It's not like I've heard from anybody else that has even come up against something like this, but if it were to happen, they're aware and they're prepared. And it's very interesting. This is a complete side note, but on one of my travels, and I was in New Jersey.
This is before or after?
After.
Okay.
And I was with a girlfriend who had picked me up at the airport, and we stopped at a grocery store. And as I've told you, I really am not comfortable yet going to the restroom by myself. There's lots of therapy for that. But so I said, I need to go. And we went. And of course, it's all the way in the back of the store and around the corner. And when we walked in, the bathroom door was open, which I was like, that's great. And there was a wet floor sign, but that was it. And so the one stall was taken. So I went into the other one, and she was waiting for the next one. And when that door opened, I hear her say, "Well, hello there." And I just knew by the tone of her voice. I was like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" She was like, "We're fine here. We're fine here." And it was a gentleman that was in there. Now, he had been in there cleaning, but didn't have any work clothes on that he was, you know what I mean? And so if that would have been me instead of her sitting out there, I don't know how I would have reacted. So it doesn't happen just in a vacuum. And I don't know that he had a bad intent. I don't know that he wasn't really cleaning, but it happens. And, in that instance, it's almost like if he was really supposed to be there, there should have been more protection for him in that instance, because you don't know how somebody like me might have reacted, right? It's just so interesting.
Yeah.
But so it does happen more than just once,
You had shared something earlier about, some people who go through this don't want to share and they just want to internalize everything. You were very vocal of, when the right time comes, I do want to share my story. Looking back, are you glad that you did? And are you glad that you shared it in the way that you allowed us to also share it too?
So glad. And I'm very thankful to you too, because I will tell you, we had a lot of people that reached out that kind of put two and two together with my post. And they were actually reaching out to Cole and Tim, which was interesting. They weren't reaching out to me directly. And so they just didn't feel right. But when you stayed on and you were just so respectful of, we have limits of what we can discuss and we can't discuss. And so it just felt like a good connection. And you showed up at the first hearing, and it was great. And so I am glad that I came forward. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest blessings has been, because what we don't know is how many people we've affected on the other side, right? Well, what I do know is how many women I don't even know that saw your story, that reached out to me through social media to tell me things that they had happened to them, and that connected with me. And that is so impactful, because you form this bond, and you hate to say that, but you form this bond. And these were women that didn't feel they had an outlet to go speak anywhere else. And so that connection was formed with people I never knew. And then all the women that I do know and know very well and had no idea anything had ever happened to them. And the stuff that they came out then and shared was crazy, unbelievable.
Yeah. I think you go through that moment of like, I don't want to share because it's embarrassing. I can't believe I let this happen, or like you that's how you didn't let anything happen. Like someone did this to you.
Right.
I want to ask about the hearings, right? You had told me, I'm going to everyone. If I can't go, Tim will go, or one of my son's daughters will go. Are you still on that track? And
100%.
Why is that so important to you to continue to do that?
So for me, I need to see it through. Also, I'm stubborn, and I want him to see me there, because I want him to see that he didn't win. I've learned a lot about our judicial system, which is interesting. A whole nother show on that. But I want to be there. I want to see it through. I want my voice to be heard. And I just want him to know that he didn't win this. And I want to know firsthand how it's being handled. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I want to see him in a position of not being in power, because he had power that day, and I want to see him in that position that he's not in power.
Stephanie, you made a point earlier that Gloria literally said, oh my gosh, like I didn't think about it that way, but you're giving her voice a bigger platform by adding this amendment to Ohio law. He tried to take away her voice, and now like the empowerment factor is just amazing. Can you share that idea of him, your observation of he tried to do this, he didn't, and now we're taking his voice away?
I think that you said it best when you said you want to make sure that you are not internalizing this as a victim. It's something that happened to you, and you can turn it to something for good. And I think that whenever that is your intention, I think the universe comes along to help alongside you and to really amplify it. So I got to play a small role in that so far.
Huge role.
And you are obviously doing the same thing, amplifying it. It was great to be able, like I said, to share with my family, my friends, my daughters. But I think, hopefully it also gives people pause. I hope at least in our community that you are interested in seeing what happens with the judicial system. I hope the judicial system will do what's just and right, and I hope people will think before they decide to commit some kind of a crime or an act that's so heinous and just random. Maybe it will help even on the other side of that. Like at least maybe they won't want to do it in Central Ohio. Maybe I hope they don't do it anywhere in Ohio, but or anywhere. But maybe it will be another deterrent in a different way.
Something that we've talked about too, and I think that what the work that has been done and will continue to be done will help with this. But not everybody has the opportunity to call a friend when they go to travel somewhere, or can have that opportunity to call a separate, more private, secure driving service. A lot of people just have to rely on these other driving services that are maybe less expensive or more easily accessible. Being able to create something that will allow everybody, no matter what their means or situation is, feel safe and feel safe, feel protected wherever they are in the state of Ohio. You both can answer this, but why does, when that comes into play, why is that so significant?
Well, I think it's significant, obviously, for our constituents and for Ohio residents and for all of us who live in, and I mean, these services are great. Let's not forget how wonderful it is to be able to, pull up an app on your phone and have a ride immediately.
Right.
And so we want to encourage and continue to have these services in Ohio. You talked about travel for out of state, for you going to different places. Well, we have so many people coming in to Ohio, obviously, and for business and for other reasons, and we're a growing region here in Central Ohio. And so whatever we can do just to strengthen and make people feel secure, whether they are an Ohio resident like myself who might pull up a rideshare app, or whether they're coming in from out of town. I think whatever we can do to strengthen and encourage economic development, encourage people, tourism, traveling, making people feel safe here in Ohio, it's always a good thing. I think it's a win.
That's such a great point. It is a great point, because I don't know when I travel if they've got these same laws in place, right? So this is great here in Ohio.
And when I was doing running through some of the interested party meetings and doing some of the background on this amendment, rideshare companies did share that they are doing annual background checks. But I think, like I said earlier, codifying it keeps anyone new. I mean, technology is always changing. There's plenty of different ways people think about inventing a new online service or something that, an app for something else. And this will ensure that any new customer, any new business that starts up, whether it's something that we've seen for a while and are maybe a little more trusted or a little more household name, that they're under that same requirement. And I think there are some next steps of things that we can do to even strengthen it further. But again, starting in this new General Assembly, instead of trying to take a last step in the last one, but
that makes sense.
To build on.
When we had spoken October, it was still fresh. I feel like it still is. It's not been that long. How are you feeling now? Do you still have, moments that, like you had said, flashback, or you just think about it? Do you feel like you are making progress, personally, going through?
100%. I'm making progress. Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, I was very lucky, right? There are people that have so much worse happen to them. I was very lucky. And my luck came in the fact that Tim was there, right? Because it would have ended much differently. So in the big scheme of things, I was. But I also am not foolish enough to know how it could have possibly ended otherwise. And so, but I try not to dramatize that part of it. And again, I just try to be aware. And I, to a certain extent, there are baby steps of things that I'll take. I'm very lucky that family and friends are very willing to step in. I will tell you, like, our industry is so tight. And I can call so many realtor friends that will go to a showing with me, for me. And it's great. And our clients are very understanding. So there are things that I've yet to do, right? I've not gone back to the place that it happened. I will, but I haven't done that yet. And there are certain situations where if we're out, Tim or Cole will go and stand outside the restroom and wait for me to come back out. So things that I need to work through, and I will work through them. And I'm not just going to sit at home under a blanket and watch life pass me by. So yeah, I think from when we met then to now, it's a significant difference. I think, you even mentioned it when I came in here and you were like, you were by yourself. I was like, yeah, I'm by myself. And so, at our last one, Tim came with us. And so I'm just very aware situationally. I thought I was, but I'm more situationally aware than I was before.
Do you have a different messaging for the suspect now than you did back in October? Something that you want to make sure that he is aware of?
I'm a pretty stubborn person, and asking about the guy that did this, I don't hate him, and I don't know that even matters. But I don't have room for that. I feel sorry for him. I don't forgive him, and I don't wish him well. but I don't hate him. I don't know what would, I don't know what's going on in his life to make that be an action that he thought was appropriate, or like what drives somebody to that point. Like, I don't know what he's been through. So, but
reminds me of a saying that I try to live by, but it's when something, someone wrongs you or something happens to you, and you hold on to it, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die,
Yeah.
right? Like, you can't hold on
Yeah.
to that. That's
yeah,
not
so-
healthy for you.